Miles McCarthy received a call from a hiker in Florida who stumbled upon lumps on a tree in the woods. It had been 2 years since his mom vanished without a trace. Something deep inside of him urged him to investigate. As he approached the site, he realized that the lumps on the tree were a clue that could unravel the mystery of his mother's disappearance. Miles knew he couldn't let this chance slip away. His heartbeat dribbled in his ears as he followed the hiker deeper into the forest. After 2 years of searching, he was finally at the precipice of the truth. If only he knew what awaited him at the end of that dark trail. But before we start our story, smash the like button, make sure to subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you won't miss any new stories. It had been a challenging month for Miles McCarthy, who, like many 20-year-olds, was trying to figure out his place in life. After a harrowing 2 years rife with nightmares and frequent visits to a therapist, he was finally at a place where he could start anew. That was until he got that call on that fateful night. Miles had always been a quiet boy, a single child in a loving home. His parents made sure he wanted for nothing. He had every toy and book he wished for, and enjoyed many visits to theme parks most only dream of. But more than any material gift or trip, Miles had the undying love of his doting parents. He had no clue that the terrible end was looming above him. Living in Florida was among the best things in Miles' life. The high school he attended was perfect, given he was among the best students academically and in sports. Miles was 18 when his world turned on its head. His mom, a celebrated botanist who also doubled as his best friend, had a heart attack. He and his dad drove her to the ER, hoping she'd make it. After a few hours, the doctor came out with his findings. Miles' mom had diabetes, and her high blood pressure spiked the heart attack. The doctor promised she'd be fine. He didn't know that her journey back to health would ultimately lead to her disappearance. Miles remembered how his life changed all at once. His mom, who had always been a ray of sunshine, was suddenly different. She would stay cooped up in her room for hours on end, only coming out for food, to use the bathroom, or to kiss him goodnight. But that was only the first half of Miles' nightmares. His dad tried everything he could to thaw her back to her old self, but it seemed the doctor's diagnosis had utterly changed who she was. In turn, Miles's dad became obsessive over her situation, leaving Miles to fend for himself despite being just a teenager. It wasn't long before he felt alone in a house full of people. Then all of a sudden, his dad reported his mom missing. Miles could remember him calling that evening, explaining that no one had seen her in 3 days. But the terrible end wasn't here yet. What followed was a 2-year search that amounted to nothing. Each of those months was grueling for Miles, who couldn't understand why a person would harm a sick woman. The authorities claimed his mom was last seen riding her bike in the local forest, which she loved doing. They promised to give the case their all, but their promises would soon fall short. The county authorities could not make any significant steps in finding Miles's mom. Her trail had gone cold somewhere in the labyrinthine forest. The authorities deemed the case a cold one. No one could understand how a middle-aged woman could lose her way in a region of the forest she was familiar with. Nothing about the case made sense. For 2 years, nothing happened. Miles and his dad changed states looking to start fresh. Although heartbreaking, they put their house on the market and moved on. Miles underwent several therapy sessions to cope with everything. Eventually, he was able to focus on his life again. But while in sophomore year, he received a call that would change his life forever. The caller, a 24-year-old hiker named Tim, had been frequenting the region of the forest where Miles' mom's trail went cold. The information Tim gave Miles sounded odd at first. While trekking through the forest, the hiker stumbled upon a tree that seemed normal at first. He was deep in the growth, deeper than he'd ever been before, and didn't think he'd find something like it in such a location. Looking at the tree, it was clear it held the key to finding Miles' mom. Tim studied the tree up close, gasping when it affirmed his theories. He took a few photos of it and rushed home, ready to break this case wide open. The first place he went to was to the local station to report the matter. But the officers didn't think much of his findings. After all, how would a tree species crack a case that had been on ice for 2 years? Seeing that he would need more immediate help here, Tim drove to the old McCarthy house. He knew they'd moved, but needed to figure out where. He was able to talk to their immediate neighbor, a wonderful 80-year-old woman who told him the McCarthys had relocated north. Although she didn't know where exactly, she theorized that they were in New York or Pennsylvania. He went back home to assess everything. Was any of it worth it? Tim wanted to save Miles from what he'd gone through. He'd hoped to give him a better chance at life owing to the closure he'd find inside that forest. What he'd found in the forest was mind-blowing. The tree in question wasn't indigenous to the region, which meant someone had planted it there. Tim hoped this person was Miles' mom, or at least someone who could lead them to her. Tim took to social media, searching for every Miles McCarthy he could. As he didn't know Miles personally, he found local teens in his town who knew him and cross-matched the photos for a possible match. It took a little while for him to track Miles on Facebook. After hours of thinking it through, he shot the 20-year-old a message. Tim paced as he waited for Miles to open the message. He knew this was dangerous, reopening old wounds, but he felt he had no choice. Tim's heart raced as Miles opened the message but didn't respond. Frustrated, he decided to take a bold step and called Miles. The first thing Miles did was accuse Tim of mocking his situation. He revealed he received cruel messages about his mom every month. Tim assured him that he was different and might have found something that could help solve the cold case. Miles's heart raced as old feelings of fear, anxiety, and helplessness flooded back. Tim's question about traveling to Florida to search for answers didn't hesitate him. He packed his gear, lying to his dad about visiting old friends. Miles didn't want to face the consequences of the truth. The journey through the Florida forest was grueling. The rain soaked them, and they trudged through mud for hours, determined to uncover something meaningful. They climbed hills and trekked through thick forest, Miles questioning Tim's confidence about a tree leading to the truth. But Tim's assurance kept him moving forward. As the path led them to a valley, the dark orange sun fought to peek through the dissipating storm clouds. Tim shared a personal story of his mom's disappearance, mirroring Miles's pain. Tim's mom was found after 5 years, her body discovered far from home, and the cause of death still unclear. His mom had likely spent years trying to survive before passing. Miles, listening intently, found himself sharing the same grief, realizing Tim's pain was not so different from his. As night fell, the two men pushed on, the forest growing darker. Tim suggested finding higher ground to set up camp, but Miles, desperate for answers, insisted on moving forward. They finally reached a clearing where Tim stopped Miles and pointed to the tree in the center. It was younger than the surrounding forest, clearly planted recently. Miles' shock grew as he realized the significance of the tree. "This tree isn't indigenous," he said, and Tim confirmed it. The clearing had been cleared recently. Someone had been here. Tim's excitement bubbled up as he added, "Someone planted it." Miles froze, his thoughts racing. This was a place his mom would have known well, but before he could finish his thought, a figure emerged from the darkness. "Mom," Miles whispered, unable to believe what he was seeing. The woman stepped into the light. Her appearance was strange, hair messy in braids, clothes dated, but she was not covered in dirt. It was his mom. "Miles!" she called, and he rushed forward to hug her. His heart almost burst from the overwhelming emotions, but the reunion only raised more questions. If she was alive, it meant one of two things. Either she had left willingly, never intending to return, or she had been lost for years, unable to find her way home. Miles knew he needed answers. But, after 2 years without his mom, he decided to let the questions rest for the night. For the first time in ages, he felt alive now that he had found her. The past months of torture seemed meaningless, but he had no idea how drastically his life was about to change. "It's dangerous out here," Miles' mom warned, pulling Tim closer. "People rarely come this deep into the forest. It's easy to get lost, or worse, become someone's dinner." Tim swallowed nervously, but Mrs. McCarthy reassured them that they were safe now. She invited them to her home. They followed her through the dark, muddy forest until they reached another clearing where a log cabin stood, warmly lit. The cabin appeared cozy, with a garden and a hide rack, but something about it felt off. This wasn't the shelter of someone who had been lost in the woods. It looked like a place built for someone trying to stay hidden. Inside, the cabin was warm and inviting. There was a rag carpet on the floor, comfortable furniture, and a kitchen in the far corner. It felt like a home away from home, yet the more Miles observed, the more questions piled up. His mom's calm demeanor didn't match the years of searching and mourning he had endured. "Nice place, Mom?" he said, trying to suppress the flood of emotions. "Thank you," she replied, explaining the cabin had belonged to a friend. Then the question Miles had been holding in burst out. "Why did you leave us?" "We thought you were dead." The relief he had felt earlier turned into sharp pain. His mom, who had been preparing a meal, stopped and leaned against the counter. "I had to," she said quietly, as if reminding herself. "I would have died if I stayed." Miles, fighting back tears, demanded to know why she couldn't take them with her. They had spent months searching, hoping she was alive, only to be abandoned without explanation. She walked over and sat him down. "Your dad and I had a falling out when you were young," she said, rubbing a scar on her arm. "We might have seemed like a happy couple, but we weren't. I would have died if I stayed." But Miles wasn't hearing it. "Lies," he muttered. "You two were happy. I remember everything." His mom's face hardened. "You only remember the things we wanted you to. A happy childhood," she snapped. "Not everything is bright and beautiful. The world is full of pain and disappointments. I wanted to protect you from that. I didn't want you growing up hating your father or me." She took his hand. "Some days I wished I could have told you everything. I thought about bringing you along, but I couldn't do that to you. You had your whole life ahead of you." She paused and met his eyes. "Now you're grown. If you want, I can tell you everything." Miles, struggling with a mix of relief and heartbreak, sat in silence. The truth was finally coming to light, but the answers brought more pain than he ever imagined.